When we first launched the search prototype, which was kind of like an offline model before we brought it in front of sellers, we sat around the room and plugged in a couple of the most common search terms that sellers have. And when we looked at the responses that it spit out, it was pretty spot on. And I remember the feeling in that room when we all kind of looked at each other and thought that we're onto something here.
Hello, everyone. I am at Amazon Accelerate. I am joined by Aishwarya, and today we are talking about innovations in seller support. And Aishwarya, before we get into the meat of the conversation, I think we should just start with an introduction by you. So could you just tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm happy to take you and everybody through my journey. Firstly, thank you for having me. I'm Aishwarya, and I'm an engineer by trade. I got my undergrad in computer science and engineering, and I have an MBA from Purdue in operations and analytics. I come with about 15 years of experience in consulting, sustainable procurement, the travel industry, and product management. And through it all, just looking back at my education as well as my experience, the common thread has somehow always been my work in helping our business owners. And so when I got this opportunity to work with Amazon seller support team 5 years ago, I knew it would be the perfect thing to do to continue my journey with business owners. And so when I was an undergrad, to give you a couple of examples, when I was in my undergrad, I helped our students put together venture pitch and their decks to raise funds to get their ventures off the ground. And then when I was in my grad school, I helped as a part-time consultant for small and medium businesses in the Midwest area. Today, though, at Amazon and for the past 5 years, I lead a product team that basically tries to understand sellers' issues when they have them while selling on Amazon and get them to the right resolution as quickly as possible, whether that's through one of the automation tools that we have or our live associates.
I think a lot of sellers that are listening might already be familiar, a little bit at least, with what's available from seller support. But could you go a bit more in detail surrounding this conversation?
Yeah, of course. We provide support to our sellers throughout their selling journey on Amazon. So if you're a newer seller or just looking to navigate through Seller Central, we provide a search functionality at the top of our navigation bar in Seller Central. So sellers could typically just type in a couple of keywords, and then we'd surface to them a whole host of resources that they could find helpful. These include help content, FAQs, seller university videos, and even forum posts. In fact, just last year, we launched a really cool new widget which is powered by AI called the Quick Answer. And basically what this does is it ingests all of this information that I just talked about into one succinct, easy to understand paragraph, so sellers could just glance through and find the response to their questions. But we know that we also have more tenured sellers who operate on Amazon. And so when sellers have a more specific issue, we offer to them a help button on the top right corner, also omnipresent on Seller Central. And when they click on this, we ask them to describe their specific issue a little bit more in detail and provide us things like their impacted ASINs, etc., so that we can then diagnose and provide the right automation to them or connect them to a live associate. But I guess ultimately, regardless of where the seller is in their support journey or which one of the product ingresses they're engaging with, our goal is to provide sellers with the fastest and most accurate responses, whether that's automation or a live associate.
I think this is a really key area. I see this being a really key area to integrate AI into directly. So can you tell me, getting a little bit more about backgrounds, what made you influence you to start working on this as a solution, specifically working on AI and bringing AI into this as a solution?
Well, I think like most of the world back in 2022, we were just extremely excited by what these models can do for even just as consumers. I remember the first time I engaged with a model like this, it was me and my husband were going for a vacation in the next couple of weeks, and I asked it to generate like a travel itinerary for me. And I was amazed at what it could do, along with the level of details, what bookings to make, and what are the high traffic areas. It was mind-blowing. And so we began to think about how we could harness the same power to help our customers who are our sellers. To be honest, though, it felt like a very natural fit for us. After all, a large part of what we do is ask sellers to describe their issues in their own words. And then we diagnose, resolve the issue, and then represent it back to them in natural language. And that's exactly the kind of things that AI models are so good at doing. We see that these AI models can allow us to perform a level of sophistication in understanding a seller's issue and performing diagnostics that we've never been able to do before. And in fact, I remember our aha moment with this when we first launched the search prototype, which was kind of like an offline model before we brought it in front of sellers. We sat around the room and plugged in a couple of the most common search terms that sellers have. And when we looked at the responses that it spit out, it was pretty spot on. And I remember the feeling in that room when we all kind of looked at each other and thought that we're onto something here.
What was just out of curiosity, what was the first reaction kind of from sellers? So you had that reaction yourself, and you could likely sense that, or you did sense that there was something bigger in play there. What was the first reaction from sellers when you released?
We were so excited. I remember we had this dashboard with like the number of times we recommended this to a seller and how often they used it and their satisfaction scores. We saw a really high engagement with our sellers on the search feature, as well as really encouraging results on the satisfaction as well. And I guess more important than their reaction was whether we actually fulfilled a seller pain point. And what we set out to do here, like I mentioned, was to ensure that the effort that the seller has to go through to read through all of this content, digest it, and then find that information within all of this content just goes away by just looking at this one paragraph. And that's exactly what we saw. So we also looked at how often sellers who engaged with this widget fell back and had to use one of the other tools, and that was an extremely low rate as well. So we were really encouraged all around.
Is it fair to say that this all started off of a family vacation originally?
Fair to say, yeah.
No. So talking about, let's talk a little bit about what this solves for sellers that they couldn't solve before. So obviously this solution brings different solutions in for sellers that they didn't have access to. So what are some examples of those? What's different that sellers have access to now that they didn't before?
Yeah, I think apart from all the work that our team has already done in the search experience, if you remember, I talked about the most specific issue resolution on the help page. So what we're focusing on right now is seeing how we can get those really quick, accurate resolutions to sellers there. Before, sellers had to click on help, describe their issue, and then confirm their issue from a short list of intents. And then based on either our ability to predict what the seller's issue is or their confirmation of the issue, we would then recommend self-service tools, which then sellers had to use themselves to actually resolve the issue. And in cases where we either didn't have one of those tools available for sellers, or if we weren't able to identify their issue really well, sellers would then have to create a case and could experience delays with transfers in our live associate experience. Now, when sellers click on help, we want to ask them to do the only thing we can't yet automate on their behalf, which is tell us what their issue is. And then once they do that and click on send, that's it. After that, we use generative AI to go from the seller's issue to the resolution and represent that back to sellers, hopefully within seconds, if not, instantaneously. And this also really fits very well with our overall vision for seller support. We know that a seller's time is extremely valuable, and it should be spent in them trying to grow their business and not troubleshooting issues on Amazon. And so what we want to do as support in the next 3 years is to be able to provide resolutions instantaneously for a majority of the issues that sellers face on Amazon. And then for the more complex, more edge case type of issues, we want to bring in the Amazon associate to resolve those issues. And we in fact think that when our associates join the conversation that AI had, we are able to actually benefit from the initial AI triage that occurred, ultimately bringing the seller to the best resolution possible.
So I'd imagine one key question that sellers and brands that are watching this have is when they're going to get access to it and perhaps how much it would cost. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. We've already begun rolling this out for some simpler issue types in the US store. And through this year and next, we'll continue to expand that experience to some more complex issues and across our stores as well. And since you asked about cost, I think that's one of the best things about this experience is that it's completely free. So even if you are a newer seller and you're just about getting your first listing on Amazon, you can still use this tool to find resolutions.
So in the hypothetical situation, maybe where a seller is asking a question that the AI in this case doesn't have the answer to, is it still possible to get a hold of a person on the other side?
Always. The option for a seller to connect with a live associate is still available. What we intend to do here is simply launch an AI generated experience that is so fast and so accurate that our sellers begin to prefer this experience over wanting to talk to somebody live. In fact, we think of this experience very much complementary to our live associate resolution experience. In cases where we're not able to fully resolve the issue with just AI, we're able to then seamlessly hand off the work that the AI has done to our live associate so that they can seamlessly pick up where the AI left off. And in fact, in many cases, we expect that an associate resolution is in fact much faster and much accurate in these cases instead of them having to start all over again.
And tell me about getting started with this as well. So how should a seller expect to get started with an experience like this? Or is there anything that they need to do?
Or just click on help. And from there on, our team's focus has been on building an experience that's incredibly simple and straightforward. Seller comes, clicks on help, describes their issue to us, and provides us any information that they think could be helpful for us to resolve their issue, very much like they do today. Provide us, detailed accounts of what you think the root cause is when you first experienced this issue, any impacted ASINs or FNSQs, and maybe even screenshots that help us understand really what you're seeing on Seller Central. Then they click on send, and that's it. I guess the main thing here is that sellers don't have to do any of the legwork themselves, and we automate all the way to the resolution for them. In many cases, we actually think we'll be able to provide a response right then and there for the seller. And in some cases where we think we want to maybe work our way into the accuracy a little bit or have an associate complete some parts of the resolution for us, they will then be able to see those resolutions in their case log like they do today already.
I'd imagine that one really key part of this conversation, I'd imagine a question that sellers are asking themselves or will eventually ask themselves is where this data comes from and or also how they can know or how the AI knows the answer to their question. So I'm wondering if you can touch on that aspect even just a little bit.
Yeah, we follow an extremely responsible and rigorous approach to accurate resolutions. Like I said in the beginning, we know that a seller's time is valuable, and we want to resolve these issues right the first time around for our sellers. And in order to do this, we follow an approach that truly enables accuracy during rollout and even after launch. And during both of these, we ensure that we follow a three-pronged approach. Before we ever recommend a resolution to a selling partner, we would always take it to our associates first. Now, our associates have a wealth house of knowledge. They have been resolving seller issues really well in the past years. And so we rely on their feedback to tell us where we are good versus where we're not yet at par with what we expect our accuracy to be. And then independent of our associates, we also take the same responses and get them audited by our internal auditing team. And they grade the response for tone, for accuracy, etc., much like they do for associate responses as well today. And then finally, even if we did great on the accuracy results on both these previously mentioned mechanisms, we A/B test every single launch that's seller facing. And what this enables us to do is to ensure that we have a really robust statistical approach to roll out an experience that we believe has to either meet or exceed the current performance of the control environment. And through this, we ensure that our sellers are always delighted with the responses that they get, along with the speed of the responses that we're able to provide. Now, having said that, we know that all AI, including ours, can make mistakes. And so we want to make sure that our sellers double check these responses and let us know if something's off, because we could really use that information to make it better for the seller the next time around.
Yeah, that's valuable for you and for the seller, I
Absolutely.
imagine. One key part of that is potentially in a hypothetical scenario, asking a question that the AI doesn't have the answer to. Is it still possible then to engage with an actual person on the other side?
What we aim to do here is simply launch an experience that is so fast and so accurate that our sellers actually begin to prefer this experience over talking to somebody live. Um, in fact, we think that our AI experience is actually really complementary to our live associate resolution. And by this, I mean that we want an associate to be able to effortlessly pick up where our AI left off, and in fact, be able to provide a resolution back to sellers that benefits from the initial AI triage much faster and much more accurately than if they had to start from scratch all over again.
There's an interesting aspect, zooming out in the conversation of AI, there's an interesting conversation, I think, around responsible development with any AI. And so I'm hoping you can talk to me a little bit about how Amazon Seller Support is approaching the development of this tool in a responsible way.
Well, responsible development is top of mind for not just seller support, but every AI team working in Amazon. And I think, we follow a couple of things that are non-negotiables for our teams. The first and foremost is that we rely heavily on our customer feedback to let us know if we're making the right progress for our end customers. And in our case, that would be our sellers. Apart from the performance and accuracy and the experience itself that's seller facing, one of the most important things to us is the security testing. And so we keep that top of mind before we ever launch anything in front of sellers. And to hold ourselves to a really high bar of security, we rely on our security communities at Amazon to ensure that they approve every launch that goes out before it even sees the first seller. And then I guess separately from these two, it helps that we host all of our models and our training data on AWS itself. AWS services has to be one of the best in the world in terms of its security hardening. And so we are really lucky to host all of our models there for our sellers. Ultimately, our goal is to always innovate on behalf of our sellers, but never at the expense of safety or trust.
I see that conversation being a really key one. It is a really key one now, but it will become more and more important as time goes on. To kind of wrap this conversation up, general conversation around generative AI is a really interesting one. You go back 3 or 4 years, 2 years maybe even, conversations around generative AI weren't really even happening in the way that they're happening now, at the capacity that they're happening now. How do you see the landscape in general changing over the next couple of years through development of Gen AI?
Wow. I mean, I think the possibilities are endless, really. I mean, starting, with where we started off this conversation, the first thing that I did with generative AI is to put together a travel itinerary. But in the past couple of years, I use it for so many more complex tasks like, reading through documents, summarizing my emails, even performing computations. And I think that is a testament to how the landscape itself has changed in the past couple of years and can only improve from this point on. I mean, even in coming back to our seller business, we see that, our ability to be able to automate a much broader range of seller queries than we've ever been able to do before is a game changer for us. But this goes even beyond just efficiency for our organization. In fact, I think where generative AI is truly going to delight our selling partner is in the level of quality and personalization that it's able to provide. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if we found ourselves in the next couple of months where our sellers begin to expect a level of personalization that they have never seen before. And I'd like to imagine a world in seller support where we are able to use these signals and put them through AI to identify a seller's issue even before they knew it happened, and reach out to them proactively and engage in a conversation of resolution. So I think in order for us to get there in the next 3 to 5 years, a lot has to happen, along with the fun advancements that are happening, including advancements in security and common sense understanding, and of course, our safety protocols. But if the past 2 years has been any example of what's to come, I am super excited for us as well as our selling partners for how this is going to change the landscape.
Well, that makes me really excited as well. I want to thank you so much for being here and for distilling such a complex topic down in a way that's really, really easy to understand. So many great innovations coming to seller support. So thank you again for being here, and hopefully look forward to more conversations in the future.
Well, thank you so much for having me.